Jacksonville Jaguars fans, welcome into Duval Daily, presented by GenJag.com. I'm Jordan DeLugo. Thanks so much for being here Monday, August 4th. Today we are looking at my mid-training camp 53-man roster prediction. Obviously, the Jaguars have their first game this upcoming Saturday, preseason game that is. They'll have 3 preseason games. We're only a little over a month away now from the start of the Jaguars regular season, which is absolutely incredible. You know, once training camp hits, it is full speed ahead. There's no question about it. That's how it goes every single year. So I figured it was a good time to kind of reset and rethink about what this 53-man roster might look like for the Jaguars heading into the regular season. There's some injuries that could potentially have an impact on the 53-man roster, I think. So we're going to take a look at all that stuff. And obviously, Jags don't have practice today. They do have practice Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Friday, they'll be getting ready for their preseason contest again against the Steelers, which is Saturday evening. And then Saturday, it's preseason. Let's go. Fired up for it. All right, so if y'all enjoy the content, please like and subscribe. You can also check out genjag.com/shop, pick up some new Duval gear. Let me know in the comment section below what you think about these 53-man roster projections. Maybe drop somebody who you think might be a surprise. 53-man roster cut or keep, right? And this isn't an initial 53-man roster. A lot of folks say the final 53, but it's really the initial 53 because things will change so much. So that's just a little bit of a misnomer there. Getting into this initial 53, I have 2 quarterbacks, Trevor Lawrence, Nick Mullins. Look, I think Nick Mullins does a lot of the backup quarterback things very well. However, when he was in Minnesota last year with Jaguars' current offensive coordinator, Grant Udinski, the Vikings routinely opted to try to find other options at quarterback if they needed a starter. Will the Jaguars go down that same route? I think they might. Like if there's an injury to your QB1, do the Jaguars start Nick Mullins or do they look for another answer? I don't know. But I do think Nick Mullins, as of right now, certainly projects to be the Jaguars QB2, and I project them to keep 2 quarterbacks. I think if they want to, they can try to practice squad Seth Hennigan or John Wolford. There's 16 practice squad spots this year. 10 of them have to be for players with less than 2 accrued seasons in the NFL. So obviously they could do Seth Hennigan there if they want to try to stash Seth Hennigan. The preseason can be very determinate though on how these things go, like how you perform when the lights are brightest, when the stakes are highest, will have a big impact on how the coaching staff views a certain player. So if Seth Hennigan goes out and has a fantastic preseason, maybe there is competition for backup quarterback. I don't know. But just something to keep in mind. I do think right now it's clearly Nick Mullins as QB2. So getting to running back. I have 4 running backs being kept. It's the names you would expect: Etienne, Bigsby, Tootin, and Allen. I think that each of these players can have a good role for the Jaguars running back room. Right now, I do think Tank Bigsby is the lead ball carrier. I think Travis Etienne is probably the lead utility back. Get the ball in space, catch passes, all that type of stuff, right? I think Bashal Tootin is the X factor, the guy who, they're trying to get along and get him to a point where they feel like he can be a true weapon for them. And then LeQuint Allen can play all over the place, and he can pass protect. He can catch passes out of the backfield. He can run the ball. He can line up in the slot. He can line up in receiver, catch screen pass. He can do all sorts of stuff for them. So I think that's the 4 running backs right now. Again, with Bigsby being the one who gets the most carries, Etienne might be close to Bigsby when it comes to total touches, but I think Bigsby's going to pace them at this point. He's running really strong, decisive, looking very solid. It's just all about holding onto the football for Tank Bigsby and for Bashal Tootin. At wide receiver, this was a really difficult one for me. I went with 5 wide receivers, which normally you're looking at 6 wide receivers. That's just kind of the league average, the standard that you go with. Sometimes we've seen 7 wide receivers kept. Sometimes you've seen 5 wide receivers kept. I went with 5 because I thought every receiver that is not in this top 5 can probably be safely stashed on the practice squad. Again, Preseason performances can definitely change that. But right now, when I look across the league and I look at the Jaguars receivers after the top 5, which we'll get to, I don't see anyone that's going to be like at the top of a list for teams to go add to their active roster. That's kind of how I feel about it. You have Brian Thomas Jr., Travis Hunter, De'Ami Brown. Those are your top 3. You have Parker Washington. You have Joshua Cephas. There are other guys who are playing fairly well. Trenton Irwin makes a lot of plays for the Jaguars, and he has experience in this league. But he was available when he was available for a reason. Eli Pankall has made plenty of plays. A lot of guys have. You also have Austin Trammell, who's been with the Rams before, been with the Jaguars before, has maybe some special teams value, although we've seen some errors on special teams from him before. Overall, I went with 5 because when it comes down to the roster numbers game, I think the Jaguars can safely stash some wide receivers that are currently on their 90-man roster onto their practice squad, and that's why we went with 5. We'll see how it ends up playing out. Will someone establish themselves in the preseason to really be that wide receiver 6? When I first did the 53-man roster prediction, I went with Dorian Singer. I still think he has the potential to be dynamite in the preseason where you get a ton of reps. He's a great route runner. He's kind of like a pro in a lot of ways as a slot receiver already. So that's someone who I would be keeping my eye on throughout the preseason, certainly. And a lot of these guys can make plays throughout the preseason. It'll just be, again, about that roster math and the strategy of who can we stash. So I have 5 for now. It definitely could be 6. I would be surprised if it's 7 with the group that they currently have. At tight end, we've got 4 tight ends, and they are the usual suspects: Brenton Strange, Hunter Long, Johnny Munt, Quentin Morris. If it was me and I was bold in my first 53, I put Patrick Herbert on there. I'm still really interested in Patrick Herbert. I just think that these are more proven commodities. And again, can Patrick Herbert be stashed on the practice squad? There's probably a good chance the answer is yes. At offensive line, I have 9 players being kept. Walker Little, Anton Harrison, those are your 2 starting tackles. Robert Hainsey, starting center. Patrick McCary, starting guard. Ezra Cleveland, starting guard. Yes, I do believe Ezra Cleveland's going to be the starting guard. Then I have 2 rookies, Wyatt Milam, Jonah Monheim. I have Chuma Edoga, who I think the Jaguars are very high on. And I have Luke Fortner. I think one of those players, most likely Luke Fortner, might not make it through very far depending on the Cole Van Lannon injury. So when players are unable to practice and you get to the end of preseason, you have to cut down the roster to 53. You can place someone on the reserve / physically unable to perform list. I think that Cole Van Lannon seems like a candidate for that based on his current situation. He could also go to injured reserve. I don't know what will happen there. But I think that the Jaguars would want to try to keep 9 offensive linemen. I know you look at Monheim and Fortner and you're like, oh, they're only centers. And so is Hainsey. I think the Jaguars will view Monheim and Fortner as 2 guys who can move around on the interior for them. I think they view Chuma Edoga as someone who can play guard or tackle. I think they view Wyatt Milam as someone who can play guard or tackle. They definitely view Patrick McCary as someone who can play guard or tackle or even center. So they have versatility in these backups. And then, once Cole Van Lannon is healthy, I would have him in the top 9. We just don't know when that's going to be. So if he's healthy before the regular season, when they have to make these cut downs, trim downs, he would be my 9th and Fortner would be off. But for now, I have Fortner. And that takes us to the defensive side of the ball. I have at defensive tackle Eric Armstead, Mason Smith. Hopefully they're both healthy. Devon Hamilton, Jordan Jefferson, and Tyler Lacey. I got 5 guys. I think that Armstead, Smith, Lacey have versatility to kind of move around the defensive front a good bit. I think Devon Hamilton is going to be your nose tackle. I think Jefferson is going to be kind of a backup nose tackle who can move around a little bit as well. So those are my 5 defensive tackles right now at, edge, really, defensive end / outside linebacker. I have 6 players right now: Josh Hines Allen, Trayvon Walker, Emmanuel Ogbah, Dewan Smoot, Jalen McLeod, who did miss practice recently, yesterday. Don't know what's going on with that. And Dennis Gardeck, who the Jaguars just activated from the active / PUP to actually participate in practice now. So those are the guys I have up front. And that's a lot of, that's numbers. That's 11 defensive front players. But the thing about Jalen McLeod and Dennis Gardeck is that they could also be slotted in as off-ball linebackers if need be. Something to keep in mind. And that means I don't have them keeping Yasir Abdullah. Then getting to actual off-ball linebacker, I have Foye Oluokun, Devin Lloyd, Chad Muma, Jack Kaiser, Ventrell Miller. I've got 5 linebackers. I think that those are some of the most important special teams players, especially when you talk about Jack Kaiser, Ventrell Miller, and even Chad Muma. I think that Devin Lloyd and Foye Oluokun are obvious starters there, but Devin has some versatility to do some different things up front with the Jaguars defense, and Anthony Campanile talked about that at his press conference yesterday. At cornerback, I have 5, but really 6 because of Travis Hunter, right? But it's Tyson Campbell, Jordan Lewis, Jarian Jones, Levi Wallace, who the Jaguars just signed, and Zach McPherson. I think McPherson's just done a really good job as a backup. As a young guy, he's made a lot of plays. He looks like he fits the bill. He doesn't look at all like a fish out of water out there, like someone who is in over his head as a rookie. He looks like he knows what he's doing. And so that's a big deal. And he's made some plays. He's pretty consistent out there. You look at he's 5'11", 191, and he actually is a 4th-year player. So he's not a rookie. That should be noted. But I think that he's made a lot of plays. I think Jabbar Muhammad has been very sticky in coverage, but he hasn't made a lot of plays on the ball. I think DeAndre Prince is competing. I think Christian Braswell is competing. So they'll have a decision to make at the back end here, but this is another one where I think injury may have an impact. Obviously, I didn't mention Buster Brown yet. Monteric Buster Brown, he's currently out for training camp. So I think he might start the season on the reserve / physically unable to perform list, which means you have to miss the first 4 games. And if that's the case, then that's where the McPherson or the Braswell or the Prince or whoever comes into play, right? But I have them going with 5 because Travis is 6, right? That is one of the reasons. That is one of the benefits of adding a Travis Hunter. He can play 2 spots, but it only counts against 1 roster spot. So that's a big deal. At safety, I have them keeping 5 right now. I have Eric Murray and Andrew Wingard as your starters. I have Antonio Johnson, Darnell Savage, and Daniel Thomas as your backups. I think that each one of those guys outside of Savage has a lot of special teams value. And I don't know what's going to happen with Ransaw. Right now, he's not practicing. My projection right now is that he starts the season on the reserve / physically unable to perform list. So there's 3 guys I have projected as reserve / physically unable to perform. They do not count against your 53-man roster, so that gives them a little bit of versatility. Obviously, they'd rather have Cole Van Lanen, Buster Brown, Caleb Ransaw than not have them. But that's kind of where we're at right now. Wait and see mode with those positions. And then I have the special teamers, Logan Cook, Cam Little, Ross Matisic. Those are your 53-man roster players right there. Again, 2 quarterbacks, 4 running backs, that gets you to 6, 5 wide receivers, that gets you to 11, 4 tight ends, that gets you to 15, 9 offensive linemen, that gets you to 24. So I do have 24 offense and more guys on the defense. Oftentimes, I should say, it does end up being 25-25, but Right now I have it 24-26. Defensive tackles, I have 5. Defensive end / edge players, I have 6. So that's 11 up front for the defense. 5 linebackers, that's 16. 5 cornerbacks, that is 21. 5 safeties, that is 26. And then your 3 special teamers as well. Let me know what y'all think in the comment section below. If you enjoy the content here, please like and subscribe. Don't forget to check out genjag.com/shop. Pick up some new Duval gear. The final day to pre-order our Duval football shirt will be tomorrow, Tuesday, August 5th. Y'all have a good one.